Okay, we're getting to the end here. I think some people, when I come up with my clue, are going to be saying it's a little bit crazy, it's a little bit far out. I would just ask you to maybe substitute, instead of crazy or far out, substitute the word childlike, childish, childlike thinking, because remember, Fenn said a number of things about kids. In one interview, he said, I think kids have an advantage finding the treasure. Don't ask me to explain that. And I thought that was very interesting that he said it, and it ties in perfectly with my feeling about what I have figured out, because there's not much he could say. It's so obvious when you think of it. And I think some of you out there, if you have open minds, are going to say, that really is obvious. Remember the old quote. I use this quote a lot, and I'm still not finding the treasure, but I still keep remembering. It kind of goes along with the whole premise of my channel, It Is What It Is. The solution of a problem or a puzzle, if it is the only solution that you can think of, no matter how absurd that solution may seem, is your solution. In other words, it's simply the fact that sometimes when you figure out a solution and it's really crazy and doesn't quite fit your paradigm, the way you look at things, it's the only thing there. It's probably it. I think some of us have had that happen in our lives, right? You learn things about other people or whatever, and you go, that can't be. I don't believe that about that person. And then you go, no, I guess it's true. Or other things in your life. You know what I'm talking about. I think kids have an advantage. Don't ask me to explain that. Okay. This is Jenny Kyle. Jenny Kyle of Mysterious Writings was the one who introduced the famous concept of the little girl in India. The little girl in India, for those people that don't know it, who are tuning in for the first time, but I'd be surprised really if you don't know anything about the treasure hunt if you're, checking this video out. The little girl in India represents naivete. I'll just leave it as perfect. Little girl in India represents naivete about the United States, inner workings of the United States. I've said before, the little girl in India doesn't know about the fishing regulations in New Mexico. I know that's a big meme. Someone said, well, she could look it up on Google. No, come on, let's get real. If they're trying to make a point, if they're trying to make a point of saying a little girl in India, let's not pretend like she's a Harvard professor. I mean, I realize you don't have to be a Harvard professor to look up things on Google, but come on, that's the whole reason she said a little girl in India, was to preclude, I would think, that concept. I mean, you can get in an argument and a debate on this Fenn thing, on these blogs and vlogs. You can just sneeze wrong and you're in a debate. It's amazing. Okay, Jenny said, your treasure hunt has inspired people worldwide to discover history, culture, and nature, but many people, even in the U.S., might be deterred because they don't live near the Rockies or can't afford to travel. Should they be deterred? Can a little girl in India who speaks good English, but only, man, I should have, this is to you out there that we had this thing about the Google. She's a little girl in India, she speaks English, but only has your poem and a map of the United States, okay? No Google search. Shouldn't have Google search. Jenny didn't even say she had Google Earth, or what I call Googly. She has just the poem, a map of the United States, and she understands English. Can she work out where the treasure is? Would she be confident as she solves each clue, or only confident when she has solved them all? Fenn's response is, the little girl in India cannot get closer than the first two clues. Fenn's response is, the little girl in India cannot get closer than the first two clues. So, we have a little girl in India, you would assume relatively naive. She can look at a map of the United States, she can read the poem, and she knows English. So she can read the poem and look at a map of the United States with the names and everything. He says she cannot get any closer than the first two clues. Keep that in mind. And here's something I didn't realize until I was researching this. I didn't know Fenn was going to write a children's book. I mean, Fenn is big into children, but not so much, in my opinion, children per se. I mean, he seems to love his children, his grandchildren, and all that. But he seems to be very into the children's state of mind, even including himself. He said in another quote somewhere, the thing about aging is my body's aging, but my mind is still 13. I think a lot of us can relate to that. I certainly can. I don't feel like I'm, in my 60s. I feel mentally about, I don't know, 20. But I certainly don't feel, but so he says, mentally he's about 13. I think sometimes when we see Fenn interacting with people, I get the impression he's about 13. That's not a criticism. I'm not saying that's bad at all. Fenn's done well in his life. He doesn't have to answer to anybody. It may even be a sign of higher intelligence in that he kind of looks at things freshly. But he does seem to be kind of I'm not going to say childish, I'm not going to say childlike individual. I'm just going to say he approaches things with a fresh, kind of open demeanor, I think. He said, and here's another quote about children. One man said he and his brother, this is Fenn, he and his brother. Fenn said, one man said he and his brother dug for buried treasure when they were kids in North Carolina, but had not spoken in 25 years. He said he read my book and called his brother. Now they are reunited and searching for my treasure. Children have the greatest imagination because their thoughts run free. Of course. And then again, just to follow up on this infatuation he has about kids and the way they think and kind of getting into the child mindset, which is exactly what I do, and I'm about to reveal my find for my clue. He says, I wonder if any of your bloggers know of a cartoonist who wants to illustrate a children's book I am working on. The person must have a sense of humor, talent, and a willingness to work with someone who doesn't have the slightest idea about what he is doing. It's kind of I never get the sense Fenn doesn't know what he's doing, but I do get the sense that he wants everyone to understand and kind of takes pride in the fact that he does things in a kind of fly by your seat of your pants manner. He's, as he said to a woman one time, slightly off topic, but I thought it was a clever phrase that I've never had the opportunity to use, but I would if I ever had to make it clear to someone that I'm not overly inhibited in my actions. He said, I'm not the kind of guy who wears a belt and suspenders at the same time. I thought that was pretty cool. Meaning that he doesn't overdo it when it comes to being careful. All right, folks, you're waiting for the solve, right? Waiting for the solve. So imagine you're a child. Imagine you take a kid and you sit him down at a map of the Rockies. And he can speak English, and he's read the poem. And you have a good map. Kind of like the little girl in India, same scenario. And you explain to him, I mean, obviously, for the first clue, where warm waters halt has to have some meaning in the child's head, even if you say, where warm waters halt means, warm waters stops, halts, whatever you want to call it. And it's a treasure hunt, you're looking for gold. That's just general premise. Here's what I'm saying, folks. What if the child looks at that and says, so we're looking for gold? And you say, yeah, we're looking for gold. And the child says, Yellowstone. Yellowstone is gold. I mean, how else can a kid look at that map and not say, or rather, why would a kid look at the map of the Rockies and be able to pick out warm waters halt? Unless it means they look at, simplistically, they see the name Yellowstone National Park and they say Yellowstone is gold. I was just like, yeah. But you know what, folks? Funny thing is, that wasn't even my first idea. And this, because I was thinking of where warm waters halt. And then I expanded my thinking on that to gold being a yellow stone. I was thinking of where warm waters halt, and I was thinking of how a kid could think of it. I was still on that theme, and I thought to myself, what if a kid instinctively, remember what it's like to be a kid? You really have to go back and pretend or think, like, remember what, you almost have to go back. See, the big thing is, I think all of this is Fenn's, this whole thing of the book and everything, it's called his memoir. He really is going back there into his childhood. He's gone back into his childhood. Childhood for me was fairly scatological. You would pee outside. I'm trying to think if I ever pooped outside. I don't think so. The peeing outside certainly was something we did. What if a kid would think where warm waters halt is taking a pee? Yellowstone. I know what you're thinking. You're going both of these ideas. Where warm waters halt is a kid thinks of taking a pee and he pees on the ground. It's a Yellowstone. And then a treasure hunt for gold. Obviously you would go to a place called Yellowstone because a gold is a Yellowstone. I know, folks. I know. But Fenn said children have the advantage, and I'm beginning to understand why. Because if you don't think of being a child in an adult, if you don't try to think like a child from an adult framework, that doesn't work. But if you really go back and remember what it's like to be a child, it works. I think the first clue is Yellowstone. I know a lot of people love Yellowstone. A lot of people have been going to Yellowstone. Guess where I'm going next? Yellowstone. But I'm going to work on this poem now. I'm going to work on this poem because I am firmly believe that that singular thing of a child could figure this out looking at it on a map with just the poem and a map and knowing English. For them to be able, it can't be Cold Springs. Makes no sense. Can't be Cold Springs Mountains. Maybe warm water, maybe Flaming Gorge, but why would a child, there's nothing distinctive, you see, for a child to figure that out. Any of us could figure that out. What would be something a child would figure out? Yellowstone is either, in a child's eyes, gold, Yellowstone. I know I'm repeating myself, but I just think it's really exciting. Or a child's literally thinking of warm waters halt being when he pees or she pees and the ground is yellow, if there's a stone, it's a yellow stone. It's just an idea, folks. I'm just throwing it out there, but it's my idea. I'm sticking with it, and I now am going to Yellowstone. I'm shooting for a fall, but I'm only going out there when I have figured this thing out. I firmly believe now at Yellowstone. I understand. Lots of people have been in Yellowstone for years and years and years. That's fine. Great. You've been right, in my opinion. Doesn't mean it's not in Vermilion Creek. Doesn't mean it's not in Echo Park or in the Echo Park Dinosaur Monument area. Doesn't mean it's not in Greenbelt Park or surrounding areas. But for me, my next clue now is Yellowstone. So I'm going to start looking. I'm just so excited. I just feel that's so right, and I'm just really excited about it, folks. Thinking like a child and coming up with that, I was like, damn, Yellowstone, right there on the map, and you're looking for gold. Has anyone ever figured this one out? It's one of those things that's so obvious, it kind of slaps you in the face. Of course a kid would look at Yellowstone and say that's where the gold is. Or even Yellowstone is what happens if I pee outside. The Yellowstone ends up on it, stops at a halts on a Yellowstone. I know. I'm going. It's going. It'll be a matter of time before I'm doing these videos. You'll see like a cage behind me. You ever see these ID shows? You know, I like the ID channel, I like these reality crime shows where real crimes. They try to trick you, you know. They'll have the guy that did it, but they'll be interviewing him. Whenever they interview people, you know, if someone's not in the interviews, you know, oh well, he died because it's not in the interviews. If he didn't make it to the interviews, he probably is the one that got killed, or he's in jail. Then they do this tricky little thing that they do where they interview a guy. I saw one the other day. He was nice. He had like an orange shirt on, button-down shirt, sitting in a nice surroundings. It wasn't an orange prison shirt either. It was kind of a darker, I think it was kind of a dark brown dress shirt though. It was like a button-down, you know, dress shirt. And he's in what looked like a library. So I figured it was his house or something, or maybe it was the studio or something. You could see some books on the shelves. And they interview him through the whole thing. And of course, you don't realize till the end he's the one that did it, and he's in prison. And then at the end, you know, they'll pan back and they show him getting up with handcuffs on and all that. And I think, man, they're getting it really tricky. That's a total aside. I just like to watch real crime shows because I like to see people's machinations and things they get themselves into and how they try to get out of it in line and stuff. I just find that a very interesting facet of, well, it's always been an interesting facet, right? It goes right back to Shakespeare and everything. All right, folks, that's it. Yellowstone, little kid found it. Yellowstone, gold, Yellowstone, where warm waters, i.e. P, stops. Hope you all have a good day. All calls to have me institutionalized will not be accepted until it's really necessary, and then I'll probably go willingly. Have a good day, and see you later.